Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. Welcome back once again, or for the very first time, to the Farts and Crap Show, where today, as per usual, it's your host, Danjo, here with another episode of something. This is Mega Man X4. In case you guys have never played this game, this is one of my all-time favorite games, period. PS1, absolute golden era, like, some of the best pixel art and one of the best, PS1 games. One of the best Mega Man games of all time. Hands down. Bar none. And, that's not the reason you guys are here. You're probably here because of the title of the video, which, this is running on the PS Classic via RetroArch, via PCSX Rearmed. In case you guys are unfamiliar with PlayStation Classic modding, the PS Classic is, a Linux-based single-board computer. It's ARM7, essentially, and it can do some really cool stuff. Sometimes even better than original hardware on modern displays, basically. And it's just kind of my preferred platform. It's nice to have one kind of box that does like a bunch of different things. That's like low power. You don't need to worry about the disc laser, all kinds of things. It's just nice to have your games backed up on something that can play them just very easily on a HD TV and play nice with like capture cards and stuff like that. So I'm not going to be providing links in this video, and I'm not going to, like the specifics and the nitty-gritty of, emulation and all that stuff, and the many strides that have happened in not just the PlayStation Classic modding community over the past few years, but just in the retro gaming space over the past like 20 years, because that would be way too much information to go over. However, if you have been thinking about modding a PS Classic, picking one up for yourself, or if you happen to have one already, great. Initially, the PS Classic was a huge disappointment. Sony flopped pretty hard on that. They didn't deliver what the fans were looking for, and the game selection was questionable / lackluster. There was a few standout hits on there, of course, like Metal Gear Solid and Final Fantasy VII and Tekken 3, but most of the rest of the library was confusing, to say the least. And Intelligence Cube, that's a great PS1 game as well. But there was tons of things that were missing, and it was very confusing. Anyway, there is some information I'm going to pass on to you guys, though. And if you do want to get into the whole like modding process, it's actually not that hard. There's hundreds of hours of tutorial information out there on YouTube already. People that did it better than what I can do, to be honest. And not gonna step on any toes there. But a couple internet searches I'd recommend if you guys want to do this process for yourself. Basically, you're going to need core and info files, and these do need to match, by the way. If you want to add a core to RetroArch, you need the respective info file as well in the correct folder. Now, just checking the file system, the folder organization, I guess, in a RetroArch build it's pretty easily, you can navigate it pretty easily. At least on the PC version of RetroArch, it is, a lot of these things are automatic. Like, you just kind of click a few things and download some stuff, and then you can get going. However, doing it on this method, you might have to do a few things manually, which is, if you've already modded your PS Classic, like, it's going to be very simple. But if yours is already modded, you need the core and info files basically to do this. and just search quote KMFD Manic /NESC close quote mini classic releases. It should be one of the first like GitHub like results on your internet search. Of course, not like an ad result or a sponsored result naturally. But yeah, there you will find a bunch of information and some downloads and stuff like that. And I think also some tutorial videos that kind of talk about it. Now, they recommend, or they showcase some of the things on the Auto Bleem mod for the PS Classic. Now, you don't have to use Auto Bleem for most of these cores. And, oh, I should probably clarify what cores are, in case you guys are unfamiliar with RetroArch. So cores essentially are the emulators. So it is the back end that RetroArch uses in order to run the games via the hardware that they were made for. So that is in the info file, essentially tells RetroArch how to handle the core, and not just handle it, but like what the core is. So the core is the tool, the info file essentially is the set of instructions for the tool. The other thing I recommend for this particular update that caught my interest and why I'm making this video is CHDman is a program for, essentially it's a compression method that you can use for PS1 games. As far as I know, it only works for single disc PS1 games, but it can be very helpful for certain games that have multiple tracks. If and if you know, you'll know what that is once you start looking at like the actual game files of like PS1 games and stuff. Sometimes they're organized into multiple tracks of information on the same disk. So the CHD compression format essentially will take all those tracks and give you one file. Now, there's a few more pieces of info, but yeah, just do a search, internet search for CHDman space recalbox. And I believe it's a wiki, so you might want to put wiki on there too. Again, it should be one of the first results that looks legit. The second set of information I wanted to pass on to you guys, the name of the PS1 core that I'm using is called, in quotes again, and again, if you want to, you know, do an internet search for this, you know, like I doubt you're gonna find it standalone. I wouldn't recommend that way, but this is the name of the core that you're gonna want to use for this method. KM underscore PCSX underscore neon underscore libretro.so. Now .so essentially is the Linux version of an application extension for RetroArch. Now, if you're running RetroArch on Windows, all the cores end with the extension .dll. That's just because of the format, okay? They're the same thing. .so is just like the PS Classics version of RetroArch. That's their version of it. So don't try to rename it to DLL, it's not going to work. .so is proper, okay? Now, if you have not modded your PS Classic yet, or if you haven't got a PS Classic 2 mod yet, highly recommend looking into some of the info. There's tons of it on the internet. There's some good stuff on Reddit and Discord and YouTube and all those things. But yeah, if you want to look into the process of modding it, definitely just do an internet search for Mod My Classic space project space Iris. Now this is for the mod that I use, Project Iris, because I like, it's similar to Auto Bleem, but I like it a bit better. A lot of that comes down to user interface, a few functionality things. Yeah, just a few little nitty-gritty things. Honestly, there's not a huge difference. Like, to the layman and people that are not super familiar with the modding and programming aspect of the everything. Either one is a fine choice. Personally, I use Project Iris, but that's me. What else? The other thing... Oh yes, right. Again, in no way is any of this condoning piracy of any format. Like, this is purely for if you want to play your retro games on a format that is digitally backed up and kind of future-proofed, you know? So it is a great tool, especially for people that care about video game preservation, accuracy of retro gaming, and just a bunch of other things. Because the thing is, it's all too often that we get retro collections on modern platforms and they don't run correctly. Like, there's an unnecessary amount of input lag, or it sometimes even introduces new glitches that weren't present in the original game. Or there's some key features that are missing. Like, it's very rare when a new retro collection comes out and it's like the definitive way to play something. It almost never happens. So, you know, and even, like, I love Capcom, but even Capcom is, like, not immune to this kind of thing. Like, I did, and I think when I played this game on my channel, I think I played the Mega Man X Collection 2? No, it's the first one. The first one has X, X2, X3, and X4. The second collection has X5, 6, 7, and 8, I think. And yeah, they added some cool stuff. There's like some bonus features, blah blah blah. What I care about is the game. Is there a noticeable amount of input lag? Is there a 1-to-1 PAR option? Like, is the audio reproduction accurate? Is it fully representing the original greatness of the game, or is it a lesser version? And again, a lot of this comes down to, like, why people collect retro games in the first place. It's like, yeah, you want to... If you... it's hard to appreciate a game when there's so many... things that frequently get in the way. And a lot of games like this too, especially, where it's fast. It's, yeah, let's just give this a second. It's, it's fast to the point where it's blistering. Like, It's amped up. It's electric guitars like cranked to 11. It's any kind of hiccups can cause all kinds of problems. Like, for example, Gunstar Heroes is one of my favorite games of all time. Sega Genesis classic. Like, Treasure absolutely killed it. So glad those guys actually made that company, Treasure, and like did what they did to make that game. Like, I mean, it started with leaving Konami, but you know, they went on to make one of the best games of the 90s. So, props to them. And I was trying to play it like with a friend on the internet over the, you know, online multiplayer. And there's a couple of different ways to do that. None of which are very good. That's the problem. Like, there's problems in every modern release of that game. There's problems with it. Either the audio sounds terrible, or there's other glitches that are not part of the main game, and part of that is because it's pushing the system hardware so hard. Like, you really need to dial in the right settings. You can't just use the default, like, hey, this is the, you know, here's the Sega Genesis emulator via our service, here's the game, whatever, and then enjoy. It doesn't work most of the time. It really doesn't. And especially like with Switch Online. I love Switch Online. They offer so many cool things. I've said before, like, and I'll say it again, like what they've done, like with the with the Game Boy Advance and like the N64, amazing. And the N64 at launch was critically, like, torn apart. People were so upset. Like, nothing ran correctly. There was all kinds of problems. But you know what? They fixed it. They fixed it. Like, now there's like no problems with it. Those games are wonderful. Like, and especially even with the GoldenEye, dude, like, people are having like little graphical things like with Ocarina of Time, and that was like the big one a lot of people are upset about. And like, but now, yeah, with GoldenEye N64 on NSO, it's incredible. Like, in like Star Fox 64 and Mario Kart 64, and those games are great. And that's hopefully what you get, you know, when people are upset and that things don't run properly. But on the Genesis app, things are pretty abysmal. Like, there's tons of input latency that doesn't need to be there. You know, there's like motion blur going on. I fell through the floor on Gunstar Heroes, like, which never happens. Like, the audio reproduction is just poor. There's no reason it should be that bad when N64 games are like flawless. N64 is a lot harder to emulate than Sega Genesis, alright? But they've done like nothing to improve it. And it's very disappointing, because to me, that was a huge selling point to the expansion pack, which is not a cheap upgrade. Like, granted, for what you get, like with the N64 and the Game Boy Advance now, yeah, it's still totally worth it, but initially it was just N64 and Genesis. And there is no reason it can't play Genesis games in like flawless quality. There's no reason. Anyway, the other great thing about PS1 on here, as I mentioned, I'm using what I said earlier, the KM PCSX Neon core. One thing you can do in RetroArch, which is great, is with this core, they have the option to pre-cache, now only for CHD. Now, what does this mean? Now, the CD access method, I'll just read the description first and then tell you, my take. So it says select method used to read data from the content disk images, right? So that is the digital representation of the PS1 disk. Synchronous mimics original hardware, which is better sometimes. Asynchronous can reduce stuttering on devices with slow storage. Essentially, it keeps reading regardless of when the system tells itself to read data off the disk. It'll just like keep going to hopefully, reduce the stuttering, essentially. Pre-cache, CHD, loads disk image into memory for faster access, but it only works for CHD files. Now, that is great. Super good. Because it's very similar to, if you guys remember, on the PSP, a lot of games that were a little bit more impressive had the option to install data for the game onto the system, essentially to reduce load times and keep things running a bit smoother. One of them was actually Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep. That made a big difference. I remember playing that back in the day on original hardware, and I didn't initially use the install method, and then I tried the install method and then played the game, and then boom, frame rate was solid. The load times were much, much, much lower. And typically, if you can use this kind of like pre-cache method, you're going to see better performance. Like any input latency, hopefully, that was there is going to be gone. Maybe if there's like timing glitches and stuff like that, hopefully those are going to be gone as well. And again, it doesn't work every single time. It doesn't work with every single game. And also, as far as I know, CHD only works for single disc games. So you can't use it for, let's say, like Final Fantasy VII, which is like a 3 disc game, or anything like that. Legend Dragoon, Final Fantasy IX, anything that was multiple discs. I think Resident Evil 2 was 2 discs. It's not going to work for that. However, for the games that it does work for, it's incredible. And the other cool thing too is you can do a emulated overclock. So default of 57. Essentially, I depends on the game, but typically I go to like 70 or 80. It really depends on the game. If it's something faster paced, typically like Mega Man X4, a solid 80 is usually going to be the sweet spot. Most everything else I just turn off. CD audio and XA decoding, depending on the game you're playing and the type of music they use for the game, you probably need these on. But I would try off initially. If you are missing audio, try turning them back on one by one. But if you can leave them off, it does improve performance a little bit. Personally, this game does use XA decoding, so you do need that. And there's a bunch of other, speed hacks and other things that could help. But again, try it on, try it off, whatever. Always read the description, see if it's something safe to try. Most of the time, the recommendations are very solid, and just go with the recommendations. It's RetroArch. They know what they're doing. They've been at it for a very long time. The other cool thing about these kind of games, and well, it's a plus and a minus. It's not totally immune to crashes, right? Depending on the game, depending on timings, and tons of other things, you might accidentally trigger a crash even. One thing that is very nice about the PS1 games and this core, and actually most of the PCSX rearmed cores, I believe, You can enable the second memory card, which is shared, and by shared, it is shared across all games, true. But another thing that means is that is in persistent memory independent of the game you're playing. So what this means essentially is depending on if you run into a crash. Sometimes if you are using the default memory card slot 1, there it is. Had a burp. If you were saving recently, or depending on the type of data that was trying to be loaded at the time when the crash happened, you might lose your save. Which nobody likes losing their save. It sounds terrible. What the hell? If you put it in slot 2, because it is persistent memory shared, it's going to be safe. As long as the save operation completes, even if it crashes, you can load back up. There's your save. So it's very nice to have if you're playing a game that you have played before where you have found it can crash. You might want to do that just as an option. Again, it is shared across all games. It is going to be treated as a standard memory card, which there isn't that much storage. And so yeah, occasionally you might have to do some memory card cleanup, but it's better to have. If you're pretty confident in the game's stability, like you've never seen it crash, that kind of thing, yeah, just use slot 1. But it's nice to have the option. And one thing that is very nice about this game, on the CHD preload, the pre-cache, it's the input latency that happens with most iterations of this game are gone. Like, absolutely gone. It's like playing this back in the late 90s on original hardware. Like, it really is. Which is a little strange because it's so responsive. I even get additional inputs sometimes because I'm used to that little extra latency. Like, I'm so used to it that it just comes out sometimes. Or it became part of my playstyle. Which is very, very strange. So this is actually my first... Oh, there we go. And this is actually my first time playing the game since the update. So it's very odd because yeah, I haven't been able to play this game like in this quality since the 90s. I think literally since 2002, I want to say, when I had my first PS2, and like initially a lot of the games I played on it were my PS1 games. So like it's very cool. It's very good. Because like I said, even last time I played it on my channel, I did a full playthrough of this game, both X and Zero, and I was dealing with the latency. I was dealing with the game not quite running the way it should. Oh, there we go. But yeah, if you've never played Mega Man X4, awesome game. incredibly good. I didn't input the code for Black Zero because I kind of just wanted to get the video started and get things underway. But yeah, it's so cool being able to play this game like this, especially even with the by many people's opinions. Yeah, what if we do slot 2? Is that where I saved before? It is where I saved before. I'm just gonna save over this one. Yeah. But yeah, the was it the cutscene? Can we get one of the cutscenes? Oh yeah, this game has like the best legendary anime cutscenes. Like,
we have all been wrongfully judged as mavericks by the humans. We cannot suffer this indignity and live in disgrace. We will build our own nation of Reploids. But remember, this is neither about insurrection nor rebellion against our human creators. This is about our liberty and security. We must battle for our own individual rights and our own survival. Together we will build our nation, a sanctuary for all Reploids, our own utopia. Let us forge onward towards a new golden era for the Repliforce.
I too share the general sentiment. Take heed, we have no other choice. Let us fight valiantly, with courage and pride, without fear, for we are the Repliforce. The most powerful army in history!
yeah.
The General has finally taken action. And now, my Maverick Hunters, what will you do? I'll be watching closely from here on out.
Yeah, and in case you guys are wondering what's going on with the frame rate with the cutscenes, to all you youngins out there who don't remember the 90s, a lot of 90s anime and cartoons in general were kind of drawn and produced in this way where I think it was they actually animated at a different target frame rate, basically. Essentially it was 24 frames per second instead of, you know, the typical like 59.94 NTSC or 60. But yeah, it's not because the capture, it's not because the game is not, you know, running properly. That's how the cutscenes look in the game. So it's yeah. And because they are pre-rendered FMVs, like they're at the original resolution as well, which I believe the PS1 resolution was 240 PI? Was it progressive? It might have been interlaced, I don't remember. It was 240 though. So yeah, half the resolution of the Wii. Half the resolution of the PS2. Yeah, 480 was kind of common for a long time. But yeah, the 32-bit and before, a lot of the times the 4x3 consoles, yeah, typically it was 240. So a lot of the pixel art and stuff is because of that original resolution. But and you know, trying to get the art style across with like the platform limitations, I guess. But yeah, that is going to do it for today, guys. I was going to show one more, I think Snowbase is what yeah, Snowbase has a really cool track in the sky. I love the narrator. Frost Walrus. But yeah, the track for this level is so chill. It's like, oh, 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 oh my. It's just very. It's like still kinda upbeat, but it's just like, it's very, it's very chill. I love it. Haha, chill. No pun intended. Actually, no pun intended. But yeah, that's it for today, guys. Again, yeah, CHD for PS1 games where it's applicable, absolutely fantastic. And like, the other thing too, it's a very good compression method. It does take quite a while to convert PS1 files into CHD, but you save so much space, like so much. And some of the modding guides and stuff recommend some like lower capacity storage devices. Like sometimes people will tell you, oh, use USB 2.0 flash drives. Don't use anything larger than like a 64 gigabyte, that kind of thing. And yeah, you're like, okay, so I'm kind of limited on storage space. Like, how much of my library can I actually put on here? CHD really helps with that, because I was nearing the limits of like just storage space in general before I converted all my PS1 games that I had on here to CHD. But it could, again, single disc games. And I saved about 9 gigabytes, I think, of storage just by switching the applicable games to CHD, which was huge, like massive, because I had like 1 gigabyte free, and then kind of just went through the conversion process. It took, quite a few. I think the whole process took like 4 hours, I think. Like, it takes a long time. It takes like 20 to 30... It takes like 20 minutes for most PS1 games on fast storage devices to go through the conversion process. But yeah, the amount of space that you save is massive. And, the performance increase for applicable games, absolutely wonderful. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for being here. Greatly appreciate it. Again, highly recommend look into some of those sources and stuff if you want to go through the process of actually modding a PS Classic. Highly recommend it. And yeah, that's pretty much gonna do it for today. So just yeah, a bit more techie than what I usually do, but kind of wanted to talk about it a little bit because honestly, a lot of these older games, like especially if you're into retro collecting and you end up dropping like 50 to $100 for a game that's like 20 or 30 years old, you're gonna want to protect that. You're gonna want to back up that game. There's so many tools to actually rip your retro games to a digital format and then play them on various platforms. There's so many good emulators for so many retro systems out nowadays. It's yeah, it's pretty great. But yeah, thank you all for being here, guys. Greatly appreciated. And again, yeah, that's pretty much all it is. But But before we get going, a very special thank you going out to the current Farts and Crap Show members, which at the time of recording is Novellis Draconis. But if you want to be incredibly awesome, support the show a bit more directly, and get in on those with membership benefits like Novellis Draconis, check out the join button down below. Tiers start at $3 a month. That's only 10 cents a day. Gets you into all the basic stuff, including getting to vote on the series that get made right here on this channel. So if you guys do want to get in on that, check out the join button. Tiers start at $3 a month. I already said that part. Check out the membership tab. Once you sign up for a tier, you will see the previous members' choice polls, where you can still leave your input on most of those. They're the polls posted for the members to vote on the next series to get made here on this channel. I will definitely keep you guys up to date when things are active. We have another one coming up sometime next week. If you're watching this at the time of release, it will be running sometime during mid-June. The polls always run for 1 week, and then after the 7 days have passed, the winner is decided, and then I start the recording process for that next series. So, yeah, that's gonna do it for now. Thank you all so much for being here. Greatly appreciate it. Remember to stay cool out there, guys. And that pun was definitely intended. But yeah, till next time, take care and have yourselves a beautiful day.